Welcome back. Coming up in just a few moments, Dan Bongino is going to be with us, former Secret Service agent and author of Life Inside the Bubble, an incredible book that has really become a talking point in many, many ways. It is talking about why a top-ranked Secret Service agent walked away from it all. Dan entered into the duty with the elite Presidential Protective Division during the George W. Bush administration and stayed on up and through 2011 with President Obama. He then resigned from that and went on to run for the U.S. Senate in Maryland. But he does talk about protecting presidents inside the Obama administration, the NSA scandal, Obamacare. And, you know, even Steve and I, Johnson and I, we've jawed back and forth a little bit along with our good buddy Bob Just. And we realized that at that high level of government, some of these people really do live in a bubble. And what is that bubble? Can they describe that bubble? In other words, they seem to be detached from grassroots America in so many ways. But yet they have to live in a bubble in order to be protected. And we'll talk to him about what it was like to be that close to the president, where you could actually hear the president in private conversations, talking on the phone, those kinds of things, and what is the bubble itself. And but lately, it appears that the Obama administration's bubble cannot be penetrated in any way, shape, or form. In fact, the bubble has turned into somewhat of an imperialistic bubble, where it just does things and doesn't really understand the trickle-down effect that it has with people on down the line. The book Life Inside the Bubble is now available in stores and online, and you may want to check it out. For those watching on theDove TV, can see a copy of it. And he was there, that close. And we should have him here in just a couple of seconds. He is standing by to be with us, and we're going to have him on the phone. But he claims that the Obama administration is worse than the American people can possibly imagine. And I'm going to have him explain that. And basically, why did he walk away from what would be perceived as one of the premier jobs in the world, protecting the president? Now, I realize it's pretty demanding. He talks about that. It's pretty demanding, away from your family and everything. And we ready to go? Okay. Dan, are you there?
I am here. Thanks for having me.
Oh, thank you. I realize you got a tight schedule, and I value your time greatly. Thanks for what you do, and thanks for your service, my friend.
Oh, you paid for it. You're very welcome. Appreciate it.
All right. The short time we have, tell me the description of the bubble. What is the bubble?
It's this self-reinforcing group of lobbyists and acolytes and hangers-on that distort not just the president, but government officials at the highest levels' view of the world. So what you think is happening in the general public, whatever it may be, anger at Obamacare, is not necessarily what the president sees. And the bubble, like I said, is self-reflective. They only see what's going on behind them, rarely what goes on outside, and it causes some very significant problems in a system of representative government.
All right, so you came into this level of protection under the Bush administration and left under the Obama administration. Was there a significant difference between the two administrations' bubble?
Yes and no, and I hate wishy-washy answers, but I think one of the misperceptions, common misperceptions about the book as it's gained some notoriety is a critique specific to the Obama administration. It's not. It's a critique of our system of government right now in general. Using the tax code to buy off interest. These are certainly not things inherent just to the Obama administration. The one significant difference about this administration, though, compared to Bush and Clinton, is they don't seem to have naysayers within their own ranks, which is a good thing in government. You need that Dick Morris type who Bill Clinton had to say, hey, bad idea, sir. You need people on the inside of the Bush administration who told them the Harriet Miers appointment was a bad idea. The Obama administration doesn't seem to have that. They treat him as there's almost like a cult of personality there. And again, it's causing real problems, and you're seeing it now with the way the president's acting, and no one seems to be willing to restrain him.
Well, the president seems to be governing from an imperialistic position, and is it because he just doesn't care, or he doesn't hear the people in their response and their pushback?
He doesn't hear. It's both. He doesn't hear it because no one's willing to tell him, and no one seems to be willing to do anything about it either. Again, he's ignoring. It's not just that the president has taken on an imperial tone, which ironically is something the left always argues against unless it's a leftist president. He's ignoring. You can't interpret. In other words, the president there's some degree of interpretation. I get that. But if a date, for instance, on Obamacare is implement this law on January 1st, and the president says, no, we're not going to do that, that's a significantly different and very dangerous. That's why I said it's worse than you know, and a couple of other things. It's a very dangerous precedent to set that the president can just ignore laws. He doesn't, as he sees fit. I mean, that's a monarch. That's not a president.
All right. Boy, that opens up a lot of questions. But let me stick with a couple things here. How is he handling what we see as citizens as scandals with the NSA, with Benghazi, with the IRS, and the list goes on and on? Certainly he's watching the news. Are you telling me he just doesn't get it, doesn't care, or he thinks he's so powerful he can just push through it?
The latter. I think he thinks he is so powerful and has the coverage of the mainstream media, has the positive coverage that there'll never be anyone held to account. I mean, think about it rationally. You're in the radio business, the entertainment opinion business. If you thought you were going to be fired and potentially go to jail for saying something, you'd be very careful to limit what you said. But if you thought that, hey, I can say this, make more money, get more advertising, there's absolutely no penalty, you're going to continue forward. The president doesn't have anyone willing to step up. And I've spoken frequently about the media. I get it. We've argued about this for years, mainstream media. But they really, as the fourth branch of government, they have an obligation to report honestly on the facts. And if this was Nixon, forget it. There would be, people would be arrested right now and incarcerated. But this IRS thing seems to have dissipated because there's just always seems to be an interest in preserving, this man's legacy. And the great irony being, he doesn't treat the press well at all. He treats them terribly. I still can't understand why they protect him.
All right. Let me just pull on your political strings a little bit because you did run for the U.S. Senate. Sure. Do you think this president is guilty of abuse of powers and basically could be strung up on constitutional charges?
I don't know if we're at that high crimes and misdemeanor stage for impeachment. I don't. I can tell you right now we're getting dangerously close with the IRS scandal. There are a lot of scandals. Benghazi, Fast and Furious, Extortion 17, HHS, goes on and on. Right. But the IRS is the one that, William Wilkins, who is one of two appointees in the IRS, if they can pinpoint emails indicating that he used his discretion, political discretion, to target conservative groups, which looks very likely at this point, I can tell you with near certainty there's no way the president was not aware of that. And if they can... If we can move past this plausible deniability and peg him to it, he's going to be in significant trouble. That there's no question that would be a criminal type behavior.
Well, what about changing law after it becomes law? Isn't that what he's doing with Obamacare?
Yes, but here's the problem with that. Just like any criminal case as a former federal agent, it's not that the crime happened; it's proving intent. That's what the problem is when people ask me about that. The I word. You have to be able to prove intent. And it's really difficult with an uncooperative White House. Look at the Fast and Furious case. They've been dropping subpoenas on the Department of Justice for years. They're just ignoring them. So it's extremely difficult to move along. But I'll tell you this, I think history is going to judge this president extremely harshly because what happens over time inevitably is more whistleblowers. People I feel like myself who are really upset. I get a lot of phone calls from people looking to speak out.
Yeah.
The fear is going to dissipate, and they are going to start to speak out, and history is going to judge this president very poorly.
I think the average citizen, Dan, just feels hopeless or helpless. I mean, we elect people to go there to represent us, but nothing's being done. There's no pushback whatsoever.
No, it's not. And this is why I say it's a bipartisan critique. My opinion on just to go to Benghazi quickly is, there are Republicans that are covering for the president here, too.
Yeah.
I mean, they could have pushed that discharge petition by Steve Stockman or Frank Wolf's resolution, and there were Republicans holding that back. So, any Democrats listening say, oh, this guy's just, going after the D's instead of the R's. No, you're totally inaccurate. I'm going after a system of internal corruption that I think is destroying our system of representative government.
Wow.
Yeah, I agree with you. People, the frustration level I sense among the American citizenry, especially here in Maryland, I do a lot of traveling, though, is really at epic levels right now. I've never seen it like this.
How dangerous was your job?
Not as dangerous as people would think. I think because we do our job really well, we alleviate a lot of what people would associate with danger. But, you know, I got the president in and out of an active war zone without so much as a scratch on him with about 5 days of preparation. So I think we do a good job. I was just one of 3,000 men and women who dedicated to the position, and they make a very dangerous job undangerous, but do their hard work.
I got to be with President George W. Bush on several occasions, and I honor every one of them. He seemed to be a real gentleman. Would you agree?
Oh, absolutely. I do a lot of interviews on the book, and they asked me about moments that really resonated. And one thing that may not seem that significant to most, but was to me, he would meet with the Gold Star mothers who lost children in their children in combat, and watching the president firmly embrace them and shed a tear with them. You can't fake that kind of emotion. Was always, to be honest with you, it was tough to work through it because you get emotional as well. He was a good man. A lot of policies I don't necessarily share political alignment with, but you can't question the man's character.
Why'd you quit?
Well, we're at that event horizon now, with the black holes right ahead. We're at a very dangerous point in our country, and it's time to get off the couch. I mean, I say that to everybody listening as well. Talk is cheap. Action matters, and if you're not willing to do something to make tomorrow better, you're forfeiting away your right to complain. And it was a tough decision. Believe me, financially it's been a train wreck for my family, but we know it was the right thing to do.
I would assume the left is criticizing you doing what you're doing. How are you handling that?
They do, but shockingly, it's not the left that gives me a lot of problems. It's the organized right, and that may sound crazy considering I run as a Republican, but it's the establishment Republican Party that gives me almost as many problems as the left, because the system I talk about in the book, again, contrary to what some people have said about the book, is a critique of both parties and the way they've used government to enrich themselves at your expense. So it's not just the left.
Do they see you as a Tea Partier then?
Yeah, I don't know. I think so, but even then, they don't know how to define me. Maybe more of a libertarian. I tend to lean on the liberty, especially with towards the liberty wing of the party, with issues like the NSA and things like that. So I don't think anyone has an easy time defining me. Matter of fact, one of the most frequent comments I get on my Facebook page is, what party are you running in? And I consider that the greatest compliment of all, that you can't figure it out. So that's good. Yeah.
Well, Dan, thank you again for your service and for writing this. I think you have given us average citizens an insight as to what it is like not only to protect the president, but this whole thing, the bubble, we know it. The sad commentary about all this is that this president appears to be pushing through on an imperialistic mode. He really doesn't care. He's got an agenda, it seems to be going for it, and I honor the fact that you're blowing the whistle, quite frankly.
Well, thank you very much. I feel like we've done a public service, and the feedback on the book has been extraordinary. We cracked in the New York Times bestseller list, so someone's talking about it, so we appreciate it.
Great. God bless you, Dan. Merry Christmas, my friend.
Thank you. Merry Christmas.
All right, see you later. All right, and you may want to check it out. It's called Life Inside the Bubble, and by Dan Bongino. He's a former Secret Service agent, and his job was to protect the President of the United States. I think you'll find it to be pretty informative. All right, we'll see you next time on Focus Today.